Hi folks, and welcome along to the latest in the Rangers Rabble Wilf's Read a Book series, where I'm delighted that we're going to be talking to as he was introduced to me, the ghostwriter of this book here, Ali McCoist's latest offering, Dear Scotland, on the road with the Tartan Army. First of all, I'd like to thank Hodder Publications for setting this up for us. You will be watching this on or after the 24th of October 2024, which is when the book comes out. We're obviously recording it slightly ahead of that. Obviously, this is on the back of some of the books that we've done previously, the book things we've done previously with Davy Herd and his 4 books, with the Kings of the League Cup and the Tory Gillick book he did with Ian Stewart. Alistair Aird's In Safe Hands, obviously with Jeff Holmes, What's It All About, the Alfie Conn story. And then obviously we did last time up with David Mason and Marvin Andrews with Believer in Blue. This time we don't have the actual man whose name's on the front of the book because unfortunately Ali's too busy to speak to us, but we've got an able substitute. And as I say, he was introduced to me as Ali's ghostwriter. Ali puts it in the book, the man who helped get his thoughts and memories down on paper and laughed at his jokes, which is quite easy to do because he's quite a funny guy, as Ali. So welcome along to the Rangers Rabble, and thank you so much for doing this. Ghostwriter, which is a concept I want to get into. Leo Moynahan. Leo, how are you?
Lovely to be here. Thanks, Wilf.
So, Leo, can we start with just a little bit about you? I mean, I've had a quick look online as you do, and I know you've written for some stellar publications over the years.
Right.
443, which a lot of the viewers and listeners will be aware of.
Yeah.
Esquire, which they might not be aware of. Evening Standard, which for those that don't know is a London evening paper. The Times, which is obviously the Times of London. You've also got your name as author of several books, one or two that really, really intrigued me. The Three Kings, I think.
I thought you'd like that one. Yeah, I thought you'd like that one.
About Busby Shankly, and the one that would put me off is Jock Stein. I think
right.
Jock Stein was manager just because of where he was. Because obviously what we're doing today is going to be very Rangers centric because we're a Rangers podcast.
I've got that.
You've also done Cult Heroes books on Liverpool and Chelsea. Correct me if I'm wrong with any of these. I just pulled these up off.
No, it's good to hear them all in a list.
One that absolutely fascinates me for an idea for a book is The Anatomy of Football Centre Halves, the Thou Shalt Not Pass. Can you tell us a little bit about that? That sounds fascinating.
Oh yeah, that was a real baby of mine. Actually, I wanted to write that book since I was an amateur footballer, plying my trade at centre half, and it always intrigued me about the position. One, it's a position that doesn't get much kudos, and in this country, it's sort of seen as that brutish, broken-nosed, thuggish, put the ball into Rosette, and anyone else who gets in the way can join it kind of position. And I always saw it differently. And I wanted to, as I got into writing, I always thought that if I can get a book out of this, and luckily one good publisher agreed with me that we can get enough down. And I didn't want it just to be the sort of a history of a centre half. I wanted to get really into what they go through, what they really describe what to be in the 6-yard box as a centre half is like. And I was very lucky that I got to talk to some great people, including who would your listeners be interested in? Well, I took the most centre half for British centre halves. I guess Colin Hendry helped me very much with the book.
Yeah, he played with Rangers. He had a season where he won a league title with us. But I think he won a treble with us, actually, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. And he kind of epitomised, a nickname like Braveheart, and I guess part of that is how he looks and where he's from. But that kind of centre half that sticks their head in and it gets the job done, which really they've sort of left us that breed of centre halves now. Certainly, the players that used to mark Ali back in the day have gone. The real kind of tough, get your first few challenges in for free because it's really hardly a contact sport anymore.
Yeah, I mean, Ali did. We'll get into it when we're talking about the book. But Ali did take some treatment over the piece. But to be fair, for a kind of slight guy, he's not that heavy a guy. He gave as good as he could get. I mean, I followed Ali's career the whole way. You know what I mean?
I think Ali would be the first to say that he combated any physical rough stuff with verbals. I could imagine Ali really hurting a few big guys just with verbals, which is also very fun.
Yeah, I think he was quite good at winding folk up. I mean,
Yeah.
you know,
Oh yeah.
we'll touch on it in the book, but some of the anecdotes are quite good as well.
Yeah.
Something that fascinates me before we get on to the ghostwriting, but you've got another book coming out on the 24th of October as well.
Oh right. Yes, I know. I had a busy summer. Yep. I've also done a book for the Redknaps, Jamie and Harry. That is coming out. It's called A Family Obsession. Strangely, coming out the same day. That's very unplanned, but there you go. And that's really about a father and son talking about football. Really, it's it's what we talk about when we talk about football is the subheading, and it's different topics, best players they've seen and played with, best teams they've seen, the great managers, and it's just that kind of generational gap between two footballing men talking about the game we all love.
Yeah, so I mean that sounds good. I mean, it tickled me that they're both coming out on the same day. I thought this
Yeah,
man's been very busy.
Well, when I was trying to hit both deadlines, it didn't really tickle me. But anyway, we got them all done. Yeah,
Good.
it all worked out.
So Leo, your Ali's, you were introduced to me by Hodder as, would you like an interview with Ali's ghostwriter? So can you explain the process of being, just to me, being the age I am, I know that footballers back in the day used to have columns in kind of national magazines, and I knew they were ghostwritten, but you never ever found out who they were ghostwritten by. So
I know.
has that process changed any? Because I know you're obviously Ali thanks you in the book, and your name's actually inside the front leaf cover as well. So
Yeah,
ghostwriters aren't anonymous now like they used to be.
Wilf, the ghosts are fighting back. We're having our day from out of the shadows. um, I know what you mean. Yeah, definitely. I mean, ghostwriters a lot of books didn't even acknowledge sometimes that someone else had written them, and people. It was sort of unsaid in the publishing world that I think most people knew that. Even in celebrity life, lots of people are writing novels. People like Katie Price write novels these days, and she's quite open that she hasn't written a novel. But it's about getting names on the covers. Ali certainly wouldn't have the time to do it. We all know how busy Ali is. He's everywhere, isn't he? And doing a great job on all different formats from radio to TV. But his story was there to be told, and yeah, it's really a case of sitting down with someone and getting their thoughts, trying to get their voice. Ali was one that did concern me slightly on a professional level because his voice is so loved, and when Ali tells a joke or an anecdote, it is funnier than when it's written down. So you have to sort of be aware of that, and hopefully somehow nothing would be as good as sitting in a room with Ali hearing the jokes and the anecdotes, but hopefully this comes close, and by reading them, we found his voice. But by my writing them, we found his voice somehow.
Yeah. So did you know Ali before you were approached to do this, or was he
No, I
completely?
didn't. I'd
Obviously
interviewed
knew
him.
who he was, but
I'd interviewed him before. Funny enough, years ago, when I was starting out, I was asked to write the script or help write the script for one of the FIFA Pro. I'm not a gamer, but FIFA, computer games, football
yeah,
computer games. Help.
I'm not a gamer
Yeah,
either. I've lost
yeah.
me.
So I actually wrote the script, and you'd have to write loads of different scenarios and what the co-commentator could say. And that was actually Ali McCoist that year. It was back in 2001, so it might have been FIFA 2001. It must have been called, or something like that.
Yeah.
And I had interviewed him, but a long time ago. So when we were introduced, you kind of hope that there's a bit of a spark and a bond, and that certainly for me came very quickly, and we got into it, got going quite quickly, and yeah, we were lucky in that way. And actually, in all the ghosting projects I have done, it's been a pleasure because I've always really sort of just listen. The turnaround on these books is so quick. You can't be spending months trying to bond with each other. It has to happen quite quickly. Hopefully, in the first session, and it certainly did with Ali.
Yeah, because I mean, this book starts and funnily enough finishes at Euro 2024. So it
Yeah,
has
yeah.
to be a quick turnaround.
Yeah, so it was before the tournament, and there was some talk about doing the book as a real diary of the tournament. But as time went by, and we thought of it, wanted it to be more of this love letter to the national team, and that even that idea developed. But we did start thinking, look, unless Scotland win the Euros, it's not going to be It's not going to be something that people will read about in a few months' time, But at the same time, Ali is very much a TV personality, and we wanted to get. So there's 3 chapters in the book about him being in Germany, but rather than just a diary, it sort of jogs memories about his own time being away with the Scottish national team, and then
Yeah, I mean,
that sort of interweaves with chapters about memories of growing up with the two tournaments in the 70s that are so iconic in Scottish minds, and then obviously going to a few tournaments himself, in the late 80s, 90s, in the 90s, and so it's really a book about jogging his memories and his passion for the national team, but also as we went on, his time with Rangers was always going to come up, and I'm hoping that it all those Rangers memories fit in well with the national team. Whilst I know that the two aren't bedfellows, Rangers fans and international fans are quite different beings, but with Ali and with so many shared memories, I hope it works that way.
yeah, I mean, as I said to you before we started recording, what I really like about it is it's not just a chronological, I first went to see Scotland in 1973, and then then I became a player and I went down to Wembley, and then I started playing for Scotland, and then I became a TV personality, and I still watch Scotland. It is, as you say, his memories. He's talking about a period of time. Maybe he's at Rangers and something comes into his mind, and he thinks back to Scotland in 1978 when this happened, and the way that's done for me is really good because it'll appeal then to the Scotland fan. It'll appeal to the Rangers fan. And as you say, there is a major disconnect between a lot of Rangers fans in Scotland. But you don't need, because I'll be honest with you, Leo, I was a bit worried when I approached the publisher to see if I could get an interview. I'm thinking a letter to Scotland, I'm not sure how I'm going to be with this. But the way it's done, it's not all about Scotland, which is great from a Rangers fan point of view. It's not all about Rangers, which is great from a Scotland fan point of view. And if you like Ali McCoist, it's just Ali McCoist.
Well, I think you've hit the nail on the head, Wilf. I think that you really have to have Ali's personality shine through in a book, because otherwise people will see through it as something a bit bland. And even we started to chat about his memories of going with his dad to Hampden to see off the team in '78, and Ali McLeod's crazy optimism that Scotland could win the thing, and evoking those memories of that day, and everyone's being so, the idea that Scotland had a party before they went, which is Ali and I agreed was so fantastically Scottish and partly optimistic, but partly make sure you have a party. And then from there, at that age, he was 12 at the time or something, a bit older, 16. So from there, we can talk about his teenage years and how he, growing up in East Kilbride, and not just football, but going to gigs with his mates and the little gang of mates he has, and all that kind of shaped him as a young man. And they were all into punk music, but because he was playing football every week, he could hardly have a Mohican, which sort of pleased him, I think. So it's all that slightly layered book there with memories, not just of football and not just of the national team and not just of Rangers, but of his life itself, without at all being an autobiography.
Yeah, I mean, I think the punk. I mean, from what he says in the book, I think the punk thing pleased his mother more than it pleased him. That he couldn't get the Mohicans and stuff.
I think he'd have got a clip round the ear if he'd come in with a chain through his nose. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he probably would have, and not just from the St Johnstone manager either.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, as you say, it's not just an autobiography. I mean, Ali's got 2 or 3 of those already, and I know because I've got them on a bookcase just outside my door.
Quite a while ago, quite a while back.
Yeah, he's done at least 2.
When he was playing, I believe. Yeah.
But I mean, some of the stories, all the way through the book. I mean, one of the earliest ones. I mean, I don't want to speak too much about what's in the book because we want people to buy it and read the anecdotes for themselves, which are very well told. Which I'll put down to you. I mean, it must have been really difficult to get Ali to be coherent for any length of time, because all he does from the little interaction I've had, all he does is tell jokes. All he does is make light of things.
well, 2 points there that he I mean, that's a writer's dream, especially for a book. Ghosting, the last thing you want is silence and slight awkwardness. And with Ali, you kind of just guide him towards each meeting we had was supposed to be about a certain chapter and topic, but he could go off, and you've got to let him go off. He's like a sort of a wild stallion when it comes to talking. You've got to let them run around, and they do come back to you eventually. And then you could use it. It was a pleasure in that sense. But also, I did want the book to show his, not his, I guess serious side's not the right term, but he certainly is a thinking man when it comes to football, and I think that's why he makes a very good pundit, and people like him on co-coms as well as punditry, because whilst there's that natural enthusiasm, and listen, it's only a game, isn't it? And he brings that laughter and boyish enjoyment to everything he does with football. But he's certainly, I mean, you don't coach the national team and manage Rangers and go through the time, the time he was at Rangers was a very serious time for the club, and be that figurehead there by just being a joker, So I wanted that people want to hear the Ali McCoist anecdotes and laughs, and that's great. But I do hope the book shows that there's more to him than that.
Yeah, it certainly does. I mean, one of the early anecdotes, just to pick one out that I thought was absolutely brilliant, and it also highlights the fact that it's Ali's memories as he's talking. Quite early in the book, he talks about Joe Jordan scoring against, I think it was Czechoslovakia, to put Scotland to the 74 World Cup, and he broke his mum's couch when he jumped up and celebrated it. And then an SFA dinner at Glen Eagles 20 years later, or whatever it was, his mum dug Joe Jordan up about it. You know what I mean?
Well, I think Ali had just scored for Scotland in a 1-1 draw with Norway that secured qualification for the 1990 World Cup. And amid all the partying in the dressing room, a few of the old lads came down, Kenny Dalglish and Joe Jordan amongst them, to congratulate them. Yeah, and they all come down, and there's champagne flowing and everyone's very happy. And then Big Joe Jordan pulled him to one side and said, "Your mum collared me upstairs and reminded me that." And suggest I owe her some money because of my goal, Ali and his young mates jumped up and broke the sofa, which is which is good going on his mum's part. I still haven't found out if Joe paid up, so that might be for the sequel.
Yeah, I mean the way that was told, because obviously the story of him breaking the couch comes in really early in the book, and it's as he's going through his career. So that's several chapters later he goes back to that. That's what I really like. That's what I personally really liked about it, is the fact that it was jumping about, going back to memories. It's like you were talking to him in the pub and he went, "Oh, and remember I was talking about that?" Yeah. Well, this happened after it.
Yeah. I think that's the way to do a book with Ali, because it is a stream of consciousness, and whilst you don't want it to be confusing or go all over the place too much, there's no, it wouldn't be his personality. It wouldn't show his personality by just being very rigid and chronological. I just don't think that would work with him.
Yeah, no, I mean, other things that he mentioned quite a lot. He referenced his old chemistry teacher who was his football coach in high school.
Yes,
a couple of times, Archie Robertson, who coincidentally played 1-2 Scottish Cups with Clyde and was capped 5 times. Yeah. I've read all these other books, had no idea on that. I mean, I'm not saying they're not in the books, but I had no idea of stuff like that.
Yeah, he was a real influence on Ali. I think Ali was blessed, and he'd be the first to say he was blessed by being around all the managers in his life, and you include Archie Robertson in that, because he was his chemistry teacher, but also the school football coach, and they all were very of that ilk. You mentioned at the beginning that I did a book called The Three Kings about Shankly and Busby and Jock Stein, and they all come under that sort of very Scottish. And great Rangers managers. We did a whole chapter on Walter Smith.
I'll get to that.
And big Jock Wallace as well, who has a very funny moment with him as well. But all these men, Sir Alex as well, who turned him down as a kid at St Mirren, didn't he? But he then managed him for the Scotland team, and he was lucky to have all these great thinking Scottish men that kind of guided him. And I think he's very aware of that. Yeah, and Archie Robertson was one of the first, and he died quite soon after Ali left school. So it was, but a very big figure in his young life.
Yeah, I mean, talking about big figures in his life, as Rangers fans, those are similar age to me, and as I said to you before we went live, Ali McCoist, the first Old Firm game he played in was the first one I ever attended.
I know, that's incredible.
14, he was slightly older.
Yeah.
And he scored after half a minute, but we won't dwell on it because we lost the game. But because of Ali's been a part of my footballing journey the whole time I've had a footballing journey, really, and people of my age they'll know that Ali's family was really important to him, and the first person he phoned when he signed for Rangers was his gran.
Yes.
And obviously he talks about her at great depth about Jeannie, and then obviously he got news of her passing when he was in Toronto with Scotland back in 1992. Which the way that was covered was quite good because he'd already referenced her. When I signed for Rangers in '83, had to phone Jeannie, and Jeannie was really happy. And then, again, a couple of chapters on when he's in Scotland, when he's away with Scotland, he gets the news of her passing.
Yeah, I think wee Jeannie, as he always called her, was a vital person in his life and his mum's life. In fact, she brought them all up on her own. His granddad had died young. And I think when it comes to Rangers, I think Jeannie is the real link there. His dad was from the west coast of Scotland, a small island, so football was very important to him, but supporting a club was not necessarily the biggest thing in his life. So Jeannie's connection to Rangers, and once they moved to Kilbride, really shines through. And very sad for him to be away with Scotland, but quite poignant that he wasn't representing the country because she was so proud of him. Yeah,
absolutely. Then obviously he lost his dad in 1994. That was quite well. That was well. The way that was dealt with for me was quite good as well.
I think Ali had a hard time there. Davy Cooper, his great friend and clearly one of the great players that he ever played with. Ali's eyes lit up when he talks about Davy Cooper. I guess being a centre forward and you've got someone like Cooper who could just that wand of a cross of his set him up for quite a few of his record-breaking goals. So I think it was a hard time, his dad and Davy going, and it's we didn't want to dwell on things like that, but it was a certainly important time of his life.
Yeah, I mean,
Walter was very important in that time to him. Walter was everything. I think his assistant manager, his manager, his friend, his confidant, someone who, like a father figure who'd tell him when he was being stupid, which was probably quite a lot of times. And that really did mean everything to. And when I broke the chapter, before you start a book like this, you try and have a chapter breakdown so you know how the book's going to look. So the publishers, we can all work around that structure. But it was only about halfway through when I went to Ali and the publisher said, look, the way this is going, Walter needs his own chapter here. And Ali was straight away like, definitely, yeah, absolutely, because I could have doubled that chapter. In fact, that really was Ali smiling. Walter really brings a smile to Ali's face, and he is clearly so important to him. I know how important he is to your football club.
Yeah, I mean, I've picked out a quote from Ali from that chapter. I mean, I would urge anybody that's watching this that is a Rangers fan. Most of the people watching it or listening to it will be. We'll get one or two that aren't. But I mean, this book is worth the £22 cover fee just for chapter 10, which is on Walter Smith.
Right.
What I mean? I mean, from our point of view, if you've got no interest in international football, and you've got, obviously it's Ali McCoist, so it's worth it just for chapter 10, which is about Walter. And the quote I picked out from Ali is, no one outside of my family got close to having more of an impact on me than Walter Smith, which in that one sentence tells you what Walter means to him. And as you say, Leo, he had to have a chapter on his own because he's part of Ali's journey,
Absolutely.
He was Ali's coach at Scotland. He was Ali's manager at Rangers. He took him as his assistant manager at Scotland. It's all part of the story.
Yeah, and it's a really moving chapter, but it's very amusing as well. With everything that Ali says, there's lots of great anecdotes about the laughter they shared. I'm sure Ali drove Walter crazy. I think we all know he did, but there was such love there and friendship. It's a really special relationship they had, and we really wanted to convey that.
Well, it certainly comes across in that chapter. And as I say, I mean, anybody that's a wee bit kind of, I'm not sure it's about Scotland. Look, that one chapter, it's worth buying just for that.
Right. I think it's a good point you make about will Rangers fans want to read it. But I mean, as we got going, his life was Rangers. You know, I mean, he's openly says what a great time he had at Kilmarnock, and he really was very happy there because he was playing with probably a lot of the pressure off at the end of his career. But Rangers is his everything, and so again, we couldn't do this book without having Rangers, his love of the club and memories of the club in there. You know, and his eyes light up when he, you know, we were talking about Bob McPhail, who your older listeners might remember, the record goal scorer before Ali came along. And, you know, again, as I mentioned, these Scottish men that were in his life, Bob used to meet him at every home game. Bob would always have his tie, Rangers tie on, the jacket. And as he got closer, he'd be like, oh, it won't be long now, Ali, you know, as he got closer to breaking the record. And it really was that sort of thing. And, you know, Ali's eyes would light up when he talked about, you know, the sort of oak panelled walls of Ibrox, and we had to get that into the book. It would have been just very childlike not to, you know. It had to come across in there. So
yeah, of course.
I hope that, you know, that your listeners will see that whilst it's a love letter to the Scottish national team, but that is also in a way a love letter to his career, and then therefore his time at Rangers.
Yeah, I mean, you couldn't cover Ali McCoist's career without covering Scotland.
No,
I mean, the man played 61 times for his country. You know,
yeah,
he scored 19 goals. That's almost one in three. You know, I mean, I'm fortunate that at the time that Ali played, international football was in my wheelhouse. It's not anymore. It's not. I haven't fallen out with Scotland. I've fallen out with international football. That's just me personally. But I know a lot of Rangers fans who do international football but don't do Scotland. However, I also know a lot of Rangers fans who do Scotland. This is right up their street. And we've got guys on their own podcast on the Rangers Rabble who do an international show when it's international time. You know, they actually do the show.
Okay. Yeah.
This is right in their wheelhouse. You know, because it's Ali, it's Rangers, it's Scotland, but it's not. It's not a little bit Rangers and a lot of Scotland, and it's not a lot of Rangers and a little bit of Scotland. As I've read it, I mean, you know. And as I said to you at the start, I was a bit kind of, well, it's Scotland. I'm not really sure because I had another publisher that we sometimes get stuff through from, and he sent me through a copy of a Scotland book. I passed it on to one of the other boys. Just look, I'm not interested in reading that. You sort that one out because it's Scotland, but because this is Ali, and the way the story and the anecdotes. I mean, most of the, as you said before we came on, everybody knows Ali's voice. A lot of people have heard some of his anecdotes, but they're still worth hearing again.
Oh yeah, Ali's one of those guys that will say, "Have I told you this one?" And even if he has, you say, "No, crack on." You know, he's a real storyteller. So, I mean, that lends itself to books, doesn't it? And whilst getting his voice on the page is never going to be as memorable as the voice itself. To have the anecdotes all in one place, I think is quite special for a reader now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the anecdote that everybody's probably heard is the one with Gordon Jury, Paul Gascoigne, and the trout. I mean, probably, and I've heard that from people other than Alan.
Yeah, that some of them, you know, I liken it to if you go to say a Bruce Springsteen gig, you really want to hear the old stuff.
Yeah.
So if he's going to play a lot of the new album, then you know, whilst it might be great, you can't wait for him to play the old stuff. And while you might have heard it, I had no qualms about thinking, well, everyone's heard this story, I'm not going to put it in a new book. It just fits well. That was in a chapter about the old enemy. So I actually thought having a chapter about England, because he's played, you know, the relationship with the oldest international of all time, and Scotland, and also because of his time at Rangers, so many English players were his teammates. I felt that was a good idea. And then so that was the place to put a lot of Gaza stuff.
Yeah, I mean, Ali probably played in more Scotland England games than anybody else because they used to do that in training on a Friday. It was the five-a-side.
Oh yeah, well,
England, you know.
There's a good anecdote in there about that, isn't there? I don't know if you'd heard that one before about Graham. Graham Souness used to play for the English team, which wound up the Scots something rotten. But it sounds like the young Scots, you know, they were playing against some of the top names in English football, but they kind of they used to sort of humiliate them sometimes. And I won't give away too much if you haven't heard that story, but it all gets a little bit aggressive.
Yeah, I mean, the Ian Durant thing. I've certainly heard that. I've actually heard it from Durant himself. You know, we're not going to give away how that one ends. If people that don't know, but there is stuff like that in it, which I think is absolutely, again, the anecdotes are tremendous. The way you bring them across. I mean, to me, the book appeals to so many different people. I mean, as I say, we are obviously very Rangers heavy on here because it's a Rangers podcast, but you can't not love Ali McCoist. I mean, the amount of people I know that aren't football fans that they see the name Ali McCoist, a smile comes to their face. It's got to feel like them as well.
Yeah, he has brought. I don't know. I can't remember when people didn't. Even when he scored, there was such enthusiasm and such boyish enthusiasm. There was no kind of running to the away end. He might have done a bit. He was a cheeky guy, he's quite cute. But I can't think of many fans. Listen, I won't talk for Celtic fans. I don't know, but I'm not sure even they would have a huge dislike for him, apart from who he is and who he played for. There's something about his personality that that is all. From his Question of Sport days, he was just so natural on the telly and so likable that listen, as I say, I won't talk for anyone, but I get the feeling he's just one of those universally liked guys.
Yeah, I mean, you hear from I obviously I live in Aberdeen, so there's a lot of people up here don't particularly like Rangers, but people that you speak to and they say, I mean, going back to when Ali was on Question of Sport and stuff like that, they say he's putting on an act, he can't possibly be like that. Then these same people would meet him at a social setting and they say, but that's just what he's like.
Yes,
I mean, I've been forced. I've bumped into Ali a few times, never for more than a minute at a time, outside football stadiums or whatever, and that is just what he's like. He's just such a natural guy that you can't feel like.
I've got no skin in the game. I'm in total neutral, but I can tell you that he is what you see is what you get, and he is genuinely. He'll sit down over a coffee in the morning with that level of enthusiasm that it certainly wakes you up more than the coffee could.
Yeah. So before I get you out of here, there's one quote I picked up from the book that I've got a feeling this might be your quote, not Ali's.
Oh, okay.
Four words. It's more Hebrides than Copacabana. I can't really see that coming out of Ali McCoist's mouth.
As his ghostwriter, I could not possibly comment on who came up with that one.
Is the correct answer. Well, that's the sort of thing that's in there. There's loads of little things like that that's in it. So,
to be fair, it sounds like something Ali would say. So I'm certainly not going to. I can't quite remember, but it sounds like something he'd say.
Yeah. So anyway, before I let you out of here, just to
no worries
to let people know again. Obviously, the book. This is at the front cover of the book. Ali McCoist, Dear Scotland, his love letter to the Tartan Army, which is a phrase I don't like because when I used to follow Scotland, the Tartan Army wasn't a thing. Right. The Tartan Army is part of the reason a lot of Rangers fans are disengaged with Scotland because it's the foot soldiers, if you like, that don't like our club a lot. But that's a totally different thing. That it's not really for us.
Gotcha.
That's the sort of thing. But the book is, it's published by Hodder. It comes out on the 24th of October, which is when this pod's going to drop. This interview is going to drop. As I say, for the Rangers supporters out there, chapter 10 on Walter Smith is worth reading just on its own. The epilogue, I think, should be read by everybody at the top of Scottish football because basically it's Ali telling you how to sort out Scottish football, and I think the power brokers have to read that. If anybody has got access to the guys at the top of the SFA and the SPFL, just make sure they read even just the epilogue. They don't even need to, they obviously do need to read the book, but just the epilogue was because I think he hit Scottish football the nail on the head of what Scottish football is at the moment.
Right, that's very pleasing to hear because that was a sort of it's a light-hearted book. It's a nice look back at memories, but I think there's a serious point to be made about the state of the national team and football in Scotland. And Ali, as I said before, Ali's serious side and his knowledge could be very important to the game up there still.
Yeah, and if anything I've said doesn't convince you to buy it, the one last thing that I would say to you is that the proceeds of this book, or certainly some of the proceeds of this book, are being donated to the My Name's Doddy Motor Neuron Disease Foundation, which there's loads of MND charities out there. We lost one of our own a few years ago in Fernando Rickson to that bloody disease. there's lots and lots of sports. Doddy himself, obviously, that's how the foundation started. It was obviously close to Ali's heart. It's close to my heart, because unfortunately my mother passed away from it back many years ago. So if you're swithering about whether you want to buy the book or not, if the fact that it's Ali McCoist, the fact that it's Rangers heavy, if you're into international football, the fact that Scotland heavy, the fact there's a chapter just on Walter Smith, if none of that convinces you, there's a donation going into the My Name's Doddy Foundation. So guys, please just go out and buy the book. That's all I would say to you.
Fantastic.
But Leo, I can't thank you enough for giving up the time.
My pleasure. Absolutely my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on.
It's been an absolute pleasure. If you stay there, I'll come back to you just in a second. I'll just
okay.
Say goodbye to everybody.
Bye everyone.
So there you go, folks. That's the book there. Ali McCoist, Dear Scotland. On the road to the Tartan Army. It says love letter to Scotland national team, but there's loads and loads of Ranger stuff in it. It's absolutely superb. Once again, thanks to Leo for coming on. Thanks to Hodder Publications for sorting out the interview for us and letting us speak to the ghostwriter, which I think is a terrible term. And we shall speak to you all again very, very, very soon. Thanks, guys. Sorry, this setup was all